Thanks for allowing me to evaluate your swing, do the movement screen. So today we're going to talk about 12 hitting inhibitors that can impact your power, contact, and efficiency. Let me zoom in here and we can get going. So first thing we look for is just your negative move. And I may have, looks like I've started the, where are you, Firefox? I started the video too late. Let me see if we see it here. Yeah, I guess on the videos, either we started them too late or either you do not have a negative move, meaning any movement away from the pitcher. So if you don't have a negative move, then that might be something we look into as you kind of shift your weight, I should say load the weight on your right leg, and then as you step forward, you get a greater transfer of weight. So with that being said, I do not see any type of sway. The next thing we look for is just kind of loss of posture. And so we want you in an attacking mode up until heel plant. You're still attacking, but your body angle shifts. So if we start here, and so it looks like you start with a stable base to begin with. So some of my evaluation may be a little bit off, but if we look here, what we want to see is a forward lean. Then as we go a little bit further, let me go back here. So you do have your heel up, and then I'm going to say heel plant. We still want you at a forward lean. So we measure from the eye to the waist. And then slightly further. And so typically what we want to see is 3 different phases: forward, forward, and then back. And then I'm going to say if I choose this position. Okay, so based off of this, you do have a slight tilt back. Again, it's going to be a little trickier because you don't step into it. In most of the analysis, we have that negative move stepping into it. And so I'm having to guess a little bit just about where you are in your positioning. But I would say no issues with sway, no issues with loss of power. The other thing we look for is what we refer to as dead hands. And so with that, we look for movement in between the hands and the nose. And what we would like to see if this area would increase as you make your negative move forward. So there's no movement of your hands. Typically, some batters will start off with the back closer to their neck and then stretch out those hands. And what that does, it creates this elastic stretch that creates power that you can transfer into your swing. Other thing we look for is loss of base. So again, trying to figure out, like, where are we just saying is your toe touch areas that you're already going. I'm going to say maybe, we'll just say there. And what I'm looking for is where is your knee pointed? Is that back heel down? Is that knee pointed at a roughly 45-degree angle? So I would say it is going along with your foot line. So I would say you have a stable base. Other thing we look for is what we refer to as hanging back. So I'm going to draw a line straight up here, and then I'm going to take you through, so negative move to contact. And what we don't want to see is that heel go past the line. And this may not be a fair one to you because you're sliding on this one on the floor. And so you do get that heel fairly straight up. It looks like you're getting a little bit of a weight shift. So I'm going to say you're not hanging back. We'll need to evaluate that again on the field when you have your cleats and we're on the turf, just to make sure that that weight is shifting from the back foot to the front foot. Now, I do have some suspicion that there might be a little hanging back because we don't have that negative move and then that shift towards uh, the pitcher. But based off of this, I'm going to say you do not have hanging back. All right. Next thing we look for is what we call a gate swing. And really what we want is this elbow to not to get stuck on the hip as you swing through. All right, and so here we go. Such a quick swing there. Go, go, go. Is that elbow keep? Yeah, the elbow is keeping moving. It's not getting stuck on the hip. So no evidence of a gate swing. Next thing we look for is the flying elbow. And again, we get you at the toe touch position, which you're already in. And so your elbow is in good alignment with the hand. So no issues there. The other thing we look for is a push. So we have you go a few frames. And again, you still have good alignment of your hands and your elbow. So you are whipping the ball through and not pushing. The thing we look for is dumping the barrel. Basically in this position, we want the hands behind the bat. So no issues there, good technique. I think we look for is the drifting. And so we go from the heel plant position. So we'll say heel plant. I'm gonna draw a line straight up that front hip there. And basically we want you to rotate around that hip, which you do very nicely. All right, so really the only thing I saw characteristic-wise were the dead hands. You know, no negative move, meaning a movement away from the pitcher. So that could be, not could, it is representing a loss of power. So a little bit of loading on that right leg and then pushing that weight forward as you swing will definitely give you a little bit more power. You know, looking at your physical screen, I think overall you had one of the better physical screens. And so from a range of motion standpoint, this is not an issue. And so I think overall building more strength, more power will be key for you because your physical limitations are minimal. Now you did have a little bit of tightness in your shoulders, which could impact that dead hands, that elasticity that we want to create with the bat in your shoulders. But from your hip, thoracic standpoint, you actually have the range of motion that you need to be a pretty efficient and solid and powerful hitter. I'm going to switch views here. And I'll cooperate with my screen. I'm going to open the video. Let me see if I can pick the right one. All right, let's do this one. It's the longer duration. So zoom, zoom, zoom. All right, and so what we're going to do is positive move the contact. So really what I'm doing is just drawing a line on your backside there. And we don't want any space. We don't want you coming off that line. You can see right away, you come off that line a good amount. And when you do that, you're creating less space for your hands to move. And make sure my camera's not moving on this one. It may have moved a little bit. But you can see you come off your step into the ball. And then you leave less space for your hands. You see how that bat, you have to change that angle to get contact into the sweet spot. So that'll be something we'll need to focus on. And again, I think that's more of a technique issue rather than a physical issue for you. Yeah, I'm even gonna move the line in a little bit. I'm gonna see if it's due to my camera. Now you still come into it and those hips go forward. Another thing we look for is casting of the hands. We want that lead hand inside the elbow and you do, so you are casting the hand. So it goes along with the loss of space as well as the casting of the hands, is you're just basically closing this gap in between you and the ball. And so you're having to make corrections to hit the ball at the sweet spot. Again, based off your physical exam, there is a little shoulder tightness and we need to improve your core strength, but from a rotational standpoint, I'm not seeing any reason why physically you won't be able to do this. So, which is a good thing. So that means you can really focus on your technique to improve your power as well as your efficiency. Next, I'm going to switch over to the 2D analysis, excuse me, the 3D analysis. And here, a couple of things we look for. One is what we refer to as the X factor. And so this is the separation of your pelvis and your shoulders. And you don't have a lot going on as you wind up in the backswing. Most of your separation occurs after you hit the ball, and that's kind of too late at that point. We really want you to create a coil. I only get an S factor of roughly about 6 degrees. Ideally, you want 25 to 35. And that's anywhere between the negative move and then when you come in contact. And so I did admittedly mark you a little bit on the lower side. So if you kind of go here, you see you're swinging and you see the graph at the bottom left start to change. And then when you get to contact, it does show that there's potentially some separation, but if you kind of look at the picture, your hips and shoulders are moving roughly about the same. And so I would say you're not getting much coil prior to hitting the ball. And our goal is to be able to improve that coil. And I believe a lot of that is related to the lack of a negative move. So if you're having issues on that negative move, meaning like you're losing balance, or you can't maintain your balance, or you can't really appreciate that weight shift, make sure you let me know, then we can do some specific exercises for that. The other piece we look for is the kinematic sequence, just to see how you're sequencing. And so if you look here, so red is the lead arm, green is the shoulder, and then pelvis is in the orange. And so when we see these peaks and troughs, so the part we're looking at is here to here, all right? And so what I would like to see is the orange actually reach the peak first, followed by the shoulder, then followed by the arm. And so what's happening here is you're actually in reverse order. And so your arm, your bat is kind of getting out in front of your thorax, which is also getting out in front of your hips. So we actually need to flip that. We need those hips firing first in the orange, meaning that this bottom part should happen before the bottom orange part should happen before the bottom green as well as the red part. All right. And then orange. So we want orange hitting bottom first, then green, and then red. And so you are red, green, and then orange. And then also the sequence we want is the orange should be the lowest. I guess in this picture, think of it as the highest peak, then the green, the next highest peak, and then the orange, the next highest, or excuse me, the red, the next highest peak. Because that means there's a transfer of power from the hips to the shoulders to the arms. And that's something that we can work on. And again, going back to your physical screen, I believe this is all technique because I'm not finding any significant findings on your physical screen that says you can't eventually do this. And so the corrective exercises, even though for most it's going to help improve their range of motion, I believe for you it will help with your overall sequencing, but it also lets me know that we need to give you drills that work on your overall sequencing when you hit. All right. So if you have any questions, make sure you hit me up. I think overall your screen is actually very, very promising, because typically if you have physical limitations, that's the hardest barrier. I don't think you have a whole lot of physical limitations. I think if we can focus on appropriate drills and techniques, you might see changes pretty quickly. All right. Have a good one. I look forward to working with you. Take care.